Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Monday everybody. It's a Monday, so we begin today by moving through the economic updates from over the weekend. According to a new report from JP Morgan Chase & Co. economists, in nominal terms, China's share of the global economy has declined for the first time since 1994. Once again reminding us that the previously mainstream assumption that the country's nominal GDP would inevitably surge past that of the United States is increasingly looking like an unlikely prospect. According to the JP Morgan report, in 2022, the US economy weighed in at 28.4% of the globe's gross domestic product. China came in at 20%. Down a little versus 2021, and the bank predicts that the US will outperform China this year too, fueled by a strong US dollar as well as strong US consumption. Meanwhile, international ratings agency S&P Global, in its own recent report, has observed that as China's economy slows, the main engine of growth in the Asia-Pacific region will move away from it to South Asia and Southeast Asia. India's economy is expected to power ahead in the next 3 years, leading growth in the region. The report projects China's GDP growth to slow to 4.6% in 2024, edge up to 4.8% in 2025, and return to 4.6% in 2026, with India reaching 7% in 2026, Vietnam 6.8%, the Philippines 6.4%, and Indonesia remaining steady at 5%. It also recognizes that there are risks with the Chinese economy which could cause growth to slow even further, observing, quote, "Despite stimulus, China's property sector remains stressed. China's recent approval of a 1 trillion yuan sovereign bond issuance and allowance for local governments to partially front-load 2024 bond quotas contributed to our real GDP growth forecast of 5.4% for 2023 and 4.6% for 2024. However, real estate challenges persist. Demand for new properties remains lackluster, affecting developers' cash flows and land sales, a revenue source for local and regional governments. Amid constrained liquidity, highly indebted local government financing vehicles could see credit stresses intensify and hit Chinese banks' capital positions." End quote. None of this will be new to regular viewers, of course. Next up for the economy. Defaults by Chinese borrowers have surged to record highs. According to local court records, a total of 8.54 million people, most of them between the ages of 18 and 59, are officially blacklisted by authorities after missing payments on loans. This represents approximately 1% of all working-age Chinese adults and is up from 5.7 million defaulters in early 2020 at the height of the pandemic. China Index Academy, a Shanghai-based consultancy, reported 584,000 foreclosures in China in the first 9 months of 2023, up almost a third year-on-year. UK-based The Financial Times, reporting on this trend, writes that the soaring number of defaulters will add to the difficulty of shoring up consumer confidence in China. Quote, "It also throws a spotlight on the country's lack of personal bankruptcy laws that might soften the financial and social impact of soaring debt." End quote. Under Chinese law, the outlet explains, blacklisted defaulters are blocked from a range of economic activities, including purchasing airplane tickets and making payments through mobile apps such as Alipay and WeChat Pay, representing a further drag on an economy plagued by a property sector slowdown and lagging consumer confidence. The blacklisting process is triggered after a borrower is sued by creditors, such as banks, and then misses a subsequent payment deadline. Quote, "The personal debt crisis follows a borrowing spree by Chinese consumers. Household debt as a percentage of gross domestic product almost doubled over the past decade to 64% in September, according to the National Institute for Finance and Development, a Beijing-based think tank. But mounting financial obligations have become increasingly unmanageable as wage growth has stalled or turned negative in the midst of the economic malaise." End quote. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying today's episode of China Update. I have a huge favor to ask. If you like this channel, if you like China Update and you'd like to see it grow, if you'd like to help me grow the channel and put more resources into the channel, one of the best ways you can do that just takes a couple of clicks. hitting the subscribe button, and hitting the like button. And for anyone who wants to help keep the channel financially sustainable, keep the channel primarily subscriber supported so it does not have to rely on corporate sponsorships, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. It's just me making these videos 6 days a week, but with your support, it remains a tremendous pleasure and honor to be able to do it. Thank you so much. Next up, we need to catch up on Beijing's moves in relation to the ongoing Gaza crisis and Middle East policy generally. Last week, China's top diplomat Wang Yi flew to New York City for the meeting of the UN Security Council on the crisis. The PRC is the president of the security crisis for November. He called for convening a, quote, more authoritative, inclusive and result-oriented peace conference as soon as possible to set a roadmap and timetable for the two-state solution to the Palestine-Israel issue. End quote. He also reiterated the PRC's official stance on the crisis in the Middle East. Quote, China's position is clear. First, war should not be allowed to return. Second, humanitarian supplies should have unhindered access to Gaza. Third, the two-state solution, which is the greatest common denominator of the international community and the fundamental way out to the Palestinian-Israeli issue, should be brought back as soon as possible. End quote. He added, quote, on the Palestine-Israeli conflict, China stands firmly on the side of peace, humanity, and international law. End quote. Then on Friday, Beijing published its so-called position paper on the People's Republic of China on resolving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. This was a very long document. We take note of part 5, which reads, according to the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions and international consensus, the fundamental settlement of the question of Palestine lays in the implementation of the two-state solution, restoration of the legitimate national rights of Palestine, and the establishment of an independent state of Palestine that enjoys full sovereignty based on the 1967 border and with East Jerusalem as its capital. End quote. So China's position is very clear. However, so far it has primarily been words more than anything else. Now let's go past the words and look a little bit deeper at the political and geopolitical considerations for Beijing in the region. Quote, amid the current Middle East crisis, China has 3 objectives. Beijing seeks a semblance of peace in the Middle East, hopes for a halt to the Israel-Hamas conflict, and wants to project an image of a responsible great power. But the Chinese Communist Party almost certainly won't make any meaningful contribution toward Middle East peace, nor is it likely to take serious steps to facilitate an agreement to suspend hostilities in Gaza. Yet, amid not delivering on objectives 1 and 2, the CCP is well postured to advance its 3rd objective of making itself look good in the eyes of 3 audiences: the Chinese people, the Arab street, and the global South. End quote. In recent days, Manor Kewal-Ramani, head of China Studies Research at the India-based Takshashila Institute, published an excellent analysis of China's response to the Gaza crisis and assessment of the interests and risks that are driving Beijing's engagement in the region. We end today's video by quoting several selected excerpts of his analysis directly. China's diplomatic efforts since the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel indicate a clear decision to lean in favor of the Palestinian side. This decision appears to be driven by a mix of economic and strategic interests, particularly China's strategic competition with the US. In this context, Beijing appears to be viewing Israel as an extension of American power in the region and seems to be willing to accept a damaged future relationship with Tel Aviv. In return, it is seeking to build deeper partnerships with Arab states and position itself as a leader of the global South. Instability in the Middle East does not serve China's economic and strategic interests. It does, nevertheless, add another serious foreign policy stressor for the US, drawing American energies away from the Indo-Pacific. Since October 7th, Beijing's efforts to cool down the situation in Gaza indicate a serious lack of will and capability. In fact, China's diplomacy has been very high on rhetoric and low on substance. It has repeatedly talked about the importance of a new security architecture in the region and called for a peace conference to address the Israel-Palestine issue, but there has been very little tangible investment towards these goals. For instance, Chinese aid and humanitarian support commitments for Gaza have been dwarfed by American commitments. Likewise, compared to the intense diplomatic engagement by Washington, which has included visits by Secretary of State Antony Blinken and President Joe Biden, the most senior Chinese official to visit the region since October 7th has been Special Envoy Zhai Jun. The above points cast a shadow over Beijing's seriousness with regard to the Palestinian cause. Instead, it appears to be leveraging the current turmoil to close ranks with Arab states and Iran, positioning itself as an arbiter to shape a new regional order as and when the dust settles. However, the lack of substantive actions taken by the Chinese side, apart from rhetorical support and diplomatic coordination at the United Nations, will likely raise questions within Arab capitals about their estimation of Chinese power and the risks of dependence on Beijing in the event of a conflict. Here ends the direct quote and today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a wonderful Monday, and I will see you all tomorrow.